All right, everybody, we are back with our second episode of the Feeling Froggy podcast with Invasive Lures. Today, we have Nolan Brown with us. And I forgot to introduce myself last time. I'm Josh. I'm the founder of Invasive Lures. We design frogs that are made out of silicone latex material or silicone latex materials. They're hollow body frogs, and they're designed to catch big snakeheads, big bass, and last longer. And that's it. That's the whole thing. We want to give everybody quality product that lasts a long time. They're going to catch a lot of fish on, and we want to give them good information so that they can go out there and catch more fish. And to help me do that, we have Nolan today, who's going to talk with us about, well, you know what, Nolan, what area are you in, and what style of fishing are you doing right now?
Well, I'm in the southeast Florida or region of Florida, and so whenever I go do any kind of freshwater snakehead fishing, there's a lot of urban canals and places that you wouldn't normally think there's fish because it's Florida, and if there's a puddle, there's usually a fish in it,
Or a gator?
especially in especially in South Florida. So usually when the wind's blowing too hard or something like that, you can't get offshore, inshore, something like that, I'll bug out over to the canals. And that's usually a good way to, kind of make a makeup day if the weather's not acting exactly like you want it to.
So the weather is interesting in South Florida because 1 minute it's 1,000 degrees and the next minute it's a thunderstorm. But it's been a hot topic of debate, especially after the last episode we were talking about where was it before the thunderstorm or after the thunderstorm? And honestly, from my experience, it's been when the water comes in, the fresh water comes in, then the snakeheads come up to the shore. Is that pretty much what you found too?
I think it will vary slightly depending on the attitude of the fish. I've noticed that pre-front, right as that barometric pressure drops, they tend to fire up, and then, like you said, as soon as that rush of fresh water hits the systems, it's washing all of your frogs and lizards, snakes, anything prey related that they can eat down into their home, and that's really when they start to get fired up and really take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, so for people that aren't familiar, like the canals in South Florida are not like a canal in Venice, whereas like there's a 1 foot bank and there's water right there. It's like a 15-foot drop. I mean, some of these canals are like almost a 90-degree drop straight down. So there's almost a cliff, and then it'll be 4 to 6 feet. And some of these canals dry up and they get down to like a foot or whatever. But you don't really know what the depth is because you're standing so high and you're looking down. But that gives an advantage to the snakeheads and the fish that are kind of combing the sides of those canals because they're waiting for things to drop in on front of them. They mostly eat critters off the bank, and I mean you'll see them scoop up like a coot or like a bunch of bait fish that are trapped on a little wall or something. But for the most part, they're trying to eat things like your frogs, your lizards, your birds, rats, and things like that. Which brings us into our question: when did frog fishing become more than just like a regular technique to you? When did it become something that you're like, you know what, I can use this to catch a lot of fish. I can power fish this.
So it actually came a few years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago now, when I met one of your then pro staff members, actually current pro staff members, Dev Fishing. I bumped into him a couple times at a local pond that we were fishing, and he was just spanking them, and I couldn't buy a bite. And, I asked him, I was like, hey, what's going on here? And he's like, dude, I got this little bladed frog. It looks goofy, but I'm just spanking him on it. I was like, really? Gave him that funny look. I was like, there's no way. And then he started catching fish right in front of me on it. It was at that point where I realized, that the frogging, the way I was doing it versus the way it can be done can be a game changer. If you just target the lily pads or something like that, everyone targets that. So those fish are used to seeing that frog in there or some kind of other weedless presentation, where if you throw it somewhere different, like Dev was doing that day, you're going to have a whole different ball game of fish that might not normally see that presentation.
So basically, the power fishing became a little bit different because instead of finesse fishing and sitting it in the weeds and everything, you decided, I'm seeing this work. I'm seeing that there's drawing power from the blades, and a little bit of noise, a little bit of flash is pulling fish out of structure that is not really normal to where you would usually throw like a walking frog.
Essentially, we were finesse fishing them too much, if that makes sense. We were being so subtle that they weren't interested. And we had to really, the Blaze Runner was doing a lot of work back then because you hadn't released a chop frog yet, or the splash rat. We were able to run that Blaze Runner because it just bounces right off the rock or the shopping cart, the random shopping cart you'll find in there or something like that. It just bounces off that stuff, and you'll have that snakehead or that largemouth bass come up and just annihilate it because they're not used to seeing something like that.
Yeah, structure in South Florida is different than other places. When you were talking about urban structure, the places where you want to throw your frog at are not like, oh, there's an overhanging tree. Like, yeah, that works. But there's also like, oh, there's a shopping cart in the water. There's a culvert pipe. There's a series of like somebody's back patio extends past this little part of the canal. Like that structure where the fish associate because you're just in a
Or
canal where there is no shade. So,
the loon decoys that are out there,
mhm.
or even some of them coral ledges on the canals. Some of them canals will be undercut a little bit, something like that, that someone might actually look over. Can be a really good spot to throw a frog.
And you'll see some of the videos that we have on YouTube, and I mean, they don't get a ton of views by any means, but you'll see exactly what we're doing. Just cast a catch, you walk, you throw, you see, like, it could be a PVC pipe sticking out, and the fish will sit right up next to that, waiting for something to come running across the top of it. They like sitting super shallow. And not like you can't fish a little deeper out during the daytime. They go deeper down. You catch them on like bladed jigs and stuff like that, swim jigs. But if you want to get that topwater eat, you got to wait till they stay shallow and they're ready to eat anything that's coming across them in the bank. So, all right, let's talk. We already talked about where you're at. We talked about frog fishing for you, but let's talk about in recent memory.
Mm-hmm.
What's one fish that you're gonna remember for a long time? Because we catch a lot of fish. There's a lot of dinks out there, but we need to talk about the memorable fish.
I'd say probably the most recent one that comes to mind was I was actually fishing with Dev, and
Okay.
we were hitting the shade lines on banks. That day, we probably walked about 2.5, 3 miles, and we were just running this canal that was a little extra wide. And I'd noticed that there was a shallow point in every now and again there'd be a shade tree. People down here got mango trees or bananas or something like that that they'll plant on the edge of the canals, give them a little bit of privacy. So I noticed that under this, I think it was a clump of banana trees, there was a shade pocket and it was real shallow. I'd say probably over half my bites when I'm canal fishing come from somewhere around a foot of water. They're pushed up right on the bank. So I literally pitched my lure right up into that little shade pocket. It was probably something the size of a pizza box in the shade pocket with a bigger one beside it. But that little shade pocket just looked fishy to me. And as soon as the lure hit the water, this fish crashed on it and he completely missed the frog. So I absolutely sped that frog in, the splash rat actually, fired it in again, and he missed it a second time. I fired it in a third time, repeating the process of the first and second time. And I just kind of gave it a little kind of whopper plopper, just real stop. And he came up and smashed the holy heck out of it.
So we hit it on the
And that was
paws,
just
huh?
cool to see. That was just cool to see because, you knew he was there. You were just, messing with him at that point. And then to be able to land that fish was pretty cool. I think that one's going to live rent free for a minute.
There you go. Yeah. So a lot of times people are like, "Oh, this, the fish missed," and you might get like one extra cast in there.
Nah.
And like a lot of species, they don't follow it back up. Like a bowfin, maybe bass, 50-50. They could hit it, maybe not. Snakeheads, the bullseye snakeheads are a little less forgiving. If they've already left their area, like they torpedoed away, then they're out of that structure for their ambushing. They're less likely to come back and hit it. Doesn't mean they won't, just less likely. But if they're still in that ambush spot, they're mean. They're aggressive. So
What
when anything is in their spot, they're going to come back and hit it again.
what saved me there was the fact that it was on the opposite bank. That was one thing I was going to bring up when you were talking about, what to look for and, stuff like that is shadows. If you're walking a bank, be very mindful of where your shadow is. I've seen a lot where just the bill of your hat or something touches that shopping cart or something. You just see 3 or 4 of them just hightail it out because they're not interested. They're a really weird fish because they're just absolutely, they're real spooky, but at the same time, they're real aggressive and just powerhouse anything that you put in front of them. I've even seen it where we'll be walking down some of these real rocky banks, and you'll misjudge a step. Just a little pebble will go bloop, and then you just see 6 of them scatter off. So you got to be really mindful about where you're putting your feet, how your shadow, how the sun's hitting you, stuff like that. I've even gone down to I don't wear real bright colors when I snakehead fish the canals because I feel like they can see that.
Yeah, I feel like the fish can see pretty far, like probably like 20 yards or so. If you make a lot of commotion and you're walking up on them and like your shadow's in front of you, they're probably going to be less likely to eat. Doesn't mean you're going to spook them because a lot of times they just hold still, right? They're in an ambush spot. They're just waiting for you to go by. But I mean, it's not like they don't have any natural predators. Like I've seen birds scoop them up, like ospreys and stuff will come grab them.
Well, and
What's
then
the other? What's the cormorants
down
and stuff like that? They'll
down
come and
here
spear
you'll
'em.
have cormorants, so any kind of
Coyotes,
predatory
and then people, of
mammal.
course, like they see people
Yeah.
coming all the time. And I mean, they're everywhere you fish is public. Like public people walk by there. It's not like you're in an area where nobody's ever fished like from that bank. It's just It's like a road.
Well,
Literally everything parallels the roads. So
a
yeah.
lot of that I think for them is you can't see me, so I can't see you.
Mm-hmm.
If you make a lot of commotion, go waving your hands up in the air, doing this, that, and the other, then they're obviously going to leave just like you would.
And
It's
sometimes
kind
you
of
spook
simple
them
in that
off, but
fashion.
it helps you build like a pattern of where they're sitting at. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you're out there casting, and you're like, okay, maybe they're in these little pockets where there's a bunch of leaves or something is built up, and you're throwing in there. No dice, and then you're walking by and there's a divot and a little bit of grass is over that, like I'm talking the stringy like vine type grass that was over there, like was that St. Augustine grass or whatever, but that grows just a little bit, and that's where they're sitting at. They can see through all that stuff, so you walk right past them, you didn't see them, and then next thing you know the water explodes right next to you and you're like, oh, what the hell was that? But you know that you spooked a fish there, and now you need to slow your retrieve down and put it into those spots, or at least target those spots a little better when you're casting, because that's where they're sitting at. They're sitting in the indent, so they're not sitting in the middle or like a mud flat or whatever.
On that note, I've also noticed that sometimes they'll be picky, and I've had a couple where, and unfortunately, I haven't caught these fish. It would have been cool to, but they'll be like triple tail, and they'll relate to something like a styrofoam takeout container or something like that that's just kind of floated down, and like you'll watch it just kind of drift down the canal. You'll see them just directly under it, like I said, just like a triple tail. I've seen them kind of be by Gatorade bottles or something like that in the canal too. So it's not something that you usually want to pass up. If you see that styrofoam container or a cardboard box or something like that, it's worth at least a throw because these lures are so weedless that
Well,
you're not
that
really
and
going to get hung
that
up
is
on it
the
anyway.
structure. There's no other shade.
Well,
You know
there's
what I
that
mean? So
too.
if they're following some trash that's floating down, which I've seen, if there's little washouts where it's like it's a bunch of garbage in there, it sounds really bad from like a conservationist standpoint, but it's really good if you just throw like the chop frog or something and make some noise, and all of a sudden the trash explodes. That's where they hide at. They'll hide anywhere where they can get a little bit of an advantage to grab something off the bank, but. Yeah, they're pretty crazy. The other thing is like the bass have different mentalities too. Like the bass in
Hmm.
those canals are totally different. Sometimes you go out there and you're like, all right, I'm going to go catch a bunch of snakeheads. I know I'm going to throw it on the bank, drop it in, and bring it down the canal or across. And sometimes the bass have out bullied the snakeheads for position, and they're just
Yeah.
sitting on any little grass pocket or a little overhang, and you'll go through a bunch of bass before you start catching the snakeheads. And I mean, I've had days where I caught my biggest snakehead, followed up by like a 7-pound bass, literally the next cast within 50 yards of each other. Why were they both
Or
hanging out here? It must have been a good slope or something. I don't know, but
I've also seen where either me or a buddy I'm fishing with will skip a frog up into a pipe or culvert. You're working that thing back a lot of the time. Like I said, I'm working that either the blaze runner or the chop frog or the splash rat just to cover water and find these fish. But I'll be running that thing, and all of a sudden you just hear the biggest skadoosh, and out comes this big old bass from a spot that you thought snakehead would sit. So it's not always a surefire. Oh, a snakehead's in the pipe, because sometimes they will outcompete the snakehead.
I feel like the bass are less conditional than snakeheads, if that makes sense. Like the snakeheads are easy to catch if you play the conditions right. After the rain is a good condition. When the temperature drops is a good condition. When it gets later in the evening and they stage up because they are kind of nocturnal and they eat at night, great. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to catch bass at the same time, because they're going to have kind of the same tendencies, because there's only a few ways for them to get any kind of forage in those canal systems. So you'll see the bass swimming around the middle. And during the daytime, you can throw a swim jig at the bass and they'll grab it. But you can throw a swim jig at the snakeheads that are sitting on the bottom, and they've been eating all night. And unless you kind of piss them off with it or hit them in the face with it directly, probably not that interested in moving towards it. And I've been sitting there seeing gigantic snakeheads, and you're like, oh, dude, this has got to be a 10 for sure. Let me go ahead and throw my frog at it. And it's sitting there. Next thing you know, like a 2-pound bass comes by and swipes the frog, and the snakehead didn't even move. So you catch the whole bass, and you're like, get out of here, dude. And you throw that thing back, and then you start throwing back at the snakehead, and the snakehead's like, nah, I just seen what you did to the other one. I'm not doing it.
Well, I saw the video you posted. Snakehead comes spitting water at you, or when they come up and you got this big old shovel head that surfaces right behind your lure. You look at it, and all of a sudden he'll just submarine away and just slowly slink off. And it's like, come on, dude, you were right there. You should have just opened your mouth and sucked the thing in.
They love to investigate. I think
Yeah, they're
especially
very
in pressured
curious.
areas, they get a little more. They're a little more afraid to commit in high pressure areas. Some days they're just on fire, and it doesn't matter what you throw in front of them, they're going to hit it. And other days you got to have the right retrieve. Sometimes the stop and go just doesn't work. Pausing it to let them come eat it, they'll just, if it stops moving, they won't get it. But as you pull it close to the bank and it's almost out of water, that's when they hit it. If you remain still and they're kind of focused on that lure as you're bringing it through, then they won't veer off. They'll commit at the last second before it comes out of
Yeah.
the water. But yeah, the
Yeah.
ones that chase like that, those are the ones that you get one shot at it. And it's 50-50. Either the stop is going to work or you keep it moving and see what happens. But that's
Those
fishing.
those are the ones that your shadows are also big key on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I was talking about earlier. And that's probably part of the reason how I've kind of adopted the technique is like I took it and I came from a big saltwater background being in Southeast Florida. And a lot of the time if you take a bait and you rip it real cross in front of the face of a snook or something like that, they're just going to pounce on it. And I noticed that kind of trend with the snakehead too. So a lot of the time, if I had a bank that looks real fishy, I'll take and fire that thing out there and just burn it. I love the chop frog or the splash rat for that because you can just burn that thing pretty much as fast as you want. If they don't come out to that, usually you'll see them kind of, poke their nose up and they'll be looking at it a little bit. And then you go in there and slowly twitch it by them or something like that. And usually they'll eat it then. They'll at least show themselves on a real quick retrieve.
Yeah, a lot of times you're just searching for it. Like that's what the search bait's for. If like you get any kind of short strike or you get some movement, then you know where to put your frog. The fish gave away his address, so now you know exactly where he's at. So you can go back and drop a lure in front of him. That's where like accuracy is going to come in to play. You got to get it right in the spot. You got to pull it in front of their face. You got to leave it there. Sometimes leaving it in front of them for a while pisses them off, and then they just eat it. Other times, no matter what you do, they won't. So sometimes you just got to fish for the ones that are eating.
I think the blades sometimes help with that. You'll have that splash rat or blaze runner sitting right there in front of them. And of course, you got some water movement. So it's going to be, spinning that blade a little bit. And I think sometimes that just kind of messes with their head a little bit. They see that flash every now and again, but that thing's just sitting there. And I think that I've seen a lot of the times where I think if that frog didn't have that blade, I don't think that snakehead would have eaten.
So now we have our main section for the day. We're about 20 minutes in, and we're going to talk about a specific technique. And I mean, we've been kind of touching on it. We've been talking about like some nuances to it, but we want to give you guys a pretty in-depth view of what it is to power fish in the canal. So on today's Frog Talk, well, we'll let Nolan talk about it, but basically it's going to be how he power fishes in the canals and what he does for when it comes to lure selection, gear setup, basically everything you guys need to know to go be successful if you're ever in South Florida and you want to make a day trip of it and go catch you some snakeheads. So Nolan, why don't you go start us off with what frog are you picking to start with, and then what kind of gear you're using and why?
Well, I'd say it kind of depends on two things, if it's sunny or cloudy. Most of the time here in Florida, it's sunny when I start out in the mornings or something like that. So 90% of the time I'm picking up a splash rat, especially because here in Florida, we got some wind that can rip down these canals and embankments and stuff like that. So if there's a little ripple in the water, it helps make a bit more disturbance on the water surface, which I feel like draws them in a little bit better. Usually that splash rat, and like I said, I can burn that faster. If you compare something to like a swamp walker or something like that, you're going to have, to work that bait slower. And yeah, that might get a bite, but you're not going to cover as much water. I feel like snakehead they're very moody. So when you go running that bank, if you're not running that bank and that fish doesn't show himself, he's probably not going to eat. I feel like it's almost wasting time when you're just walking that frog right there, just searching. Sometimes if you notice they're just spooking from running that splash rat by him or something like that, then I'll back down from it and I'll go to something that's more quiet, maybe a blaze runner or the swamp walker. But most of the time they'll come out and they'll commit to that splash rat, especially early morning.
So what kind of rod and reel setup are we talking to throw this? Because I feel like accuracy is going to be important. Long distance casting, obviously, it's going to be good because you're trying to cover as much area as possible. But what kind of rod are we using? What kind of line are we using so that people know kind of what to expect?
The rod and reel is actually a combo I was given.
Okay.
And I started out doing it because it's one of the Johnny Morris series. And if you go in with their signature series, they have a 7-year warranty. And I break stuff.
Me too.
So, I went in thinking, okay, this is going to be a rod and reel I can beat the ever-loving snot out of. Bring it in the Bass Pro Shops, and they go, here you go, sir, here's a new rod. And I've had to do that before. I ended up going with one of them. So far, it's been good. It's probably not the best I could be fishing with. Obviously, I could go get, some $1,000 Dobbins rod or G. Loomis or some kind of custom rod that would, suit my fishing to a T. But for bouncing around in the back of the car or truck and beating these canals as hard as we do with all the rocks and sand and everything else, the combo that I have does real well in my opinion.
Well, and for me personally, the where I break it is on either the hook sets or when you're lifting the fish out of the canal. Like I said, it could be 6 feet of air between you and the water. Could be 15 feet in some of these canals. But now you got, I don't know, maybe you catch a big fish. Let's say it's a 10-pound fish. That's a pretty good one. But you also got 4 pounds of hydrilla and grass mats and other stuff, and you're trying to high stick this thing because there's nowhere to back up to. There's nowhere to bring the fish to. You have to drag it over. And I know people that are trying to boat flip into a kayak and they snap rods doing that. It's different. So you got to have some backbone. You got to have something that is maybe not the most sensitive rod, but when they blow up on it on top water, you don't really need a lot of sensitivity. You need to be able to see it, react to it, and as soon as you feel tension, you set the hook. The rest of it is you need a crane basically to get them up out of the water. So
Yeah.
So and what kind of braid are you using for that? Because we're looking at probably a lot of open water, but you also got canal rocks and stuff like that.
I was gonna I'll go back to the rod real quick. I'm fishing a medium heavy 7'2" inch.
Okay.
So that 7'2" gives me a short enough rod that I can get to some trees and stuff like that, but it also allows me to cast. And we'll touch on the braid. I fish braided line for that too. That braided allows you to cast a lot smoother through your guides. It's kind of a catch-22 because I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, I snakehead fish with 15-pound braid," but then as soon as I catch one and I set the hook, I snap that thing.
Yeah, I don't believe the 15-pound braid.
It might be possible, but it's not ideal for the kind of fishing I'm doing.
Right. And I mean, we have a kid on our affiliate team, Thor. He fishes ultralight stuff specifically to set like IGFA records and stuff. So he's caught 10-pound plus snakeheads on like, I think it was 7 or 10-pound line. And he was like, yeah, we use the frog leash for that so they don't cut you off. But yeah, you can definitely catch fish on the lighter stuff. But if you're trying to set the hook hard and drive all that kind of stuff, you're going to need something that you're going to go through a lot of 10-pound mono before you go through a roll of 50-pound braid.
You're going to be crying when you lose all your invasive lures out of your box.
Yep. You know what? I take it all back. You should all only fish with 10-pound mono. And come see me. I'll give you a 10% off. I'm joking. Don't do that. We want people to catch fish here, okay?
Yeah, so usually, I think right now I have probably 40 pounds spooled up on mine, but I know guys who fish upwards of 65. I'm going to assume there's going to be a time where I'm going to get my ass handed to me because I just chose to fish a little bit lighter than I should have. I've already caught it, a few times where that fish takes me into one of them corrugated pipes or into that shell rock, and my leader 5-6 feet up from that frog leash comes back looking like someone took a razor blade to it and just sat there and hacked it to bits.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the reason I run that frog leash 50%, because most of the time those snakehead will absolutely swallow the invasive lures. I can't tell you how many times I've needed a second set of pliers to help get a splash rat or a blaze runner out of a fish, which helps with their teeth, obviously. But again, the amount of times I've had that fish right at the bank and he'll hit that coral rock and he'll just wrap that thing and start barrel rolling. And that if you're fishing, even 50-pound braid wouldn't last too long with that, especially having to flip them up onto the bank.
Right.
So having that Kevlar leash, will really help you out there.
Yeah. So a couple of points here. The bullseye snakeheads are known to death roll. So it's like one of their escape tactics is they try and roll like an alligator. They'll spin around really, really fast on the edge of the water and stuff like that. And they got sharp little teeth and they'll cut off above the frog. That's why we made the Kevlar frog leash so that it keeps the teeth from being able to cut off the frog, which you can find on our website as well. So if you're specifically fishing for snakehead are kind of notorious for swallowing the entire lure. But you definitely need to have something that's going to help you not lose those fish when they gain a little bit of traction. Because I've seen a lot of times they'll come up and in the water, like you can drag them, but then they get a little bit of leverage when they hit some rocks or something in the real shallow part before you can drag them out. And then they start doing flips and acrobatic tricks and things like that, and they will throw a lure. They're really, really good at it.
I've seen them do some crazy stuff using their tail too. They'll flip half their body out the water, something like that, and they'll be able to find some slack in your line usually where you least expect it. So yeah, that's definitely 100% true.
We got a video of JJ fishing in the Everglades and he caught one, and this thing was in the net, and it used its front fins on the bottom to lift itself up. right? Like off the ground, like lifted itself straight up like it was doing a push up, and then try and flip its way backwards out of the net using its tail. Like
I think I
they
saw
can
that one.
kind of
Yeah.
stand up on their tail a little bit. They're weird creatures, but yeah, bass, they'll flop around and they jump and just do the regular floppy fish mechanic. Snakeheads will find a way. They're a little bit different, so. Not to sit there and plug the frog leash for you guys, but it's definitely super helpful. They got a little bit of a different bone structure to their face than a northern snakehead does. But again, northern snakehead, same 2 rows of teeth, all that kind of stuff, same idea. So it's not like a terrible idea to use it. And some people are gonna be like, I don't like it for finesse fishing. That's I don't have any problems using it for finesse techniques, but for the power fishing technique where you're just dragging something straight down the bank line and stuff,
Yeah.
I've got, I think there's a video of it. I was fishing and a bowfin came up and grabbed the frog and I went to set the hook, and bowfin have teeth too, and I was not using because I was in Orange Lake and there's no snakeheads there, so I was like, oh yeah, we don't need this, and I needed it. Yeah, that was dumb. I just lost my brown cane color splash rat that was catching all the fish because the bowfin was a big one, big enough that when he was on his way down and I was setting the hook on the way up, it no more frog.
It did some damage to your braid.
Definitely cut it off, but there's only so much you can do. Like braid does not last forever. No fishing line lasts forever. So pro tip, always check every time you catch a fish or every time you get wrapped up in a tree or you rub against some rocks or something, check it. It's better to cut and retie than lose another, $10, $12 frog. And then it's definitely better than losing the frog and the fish. So keep an eye
Yeah,
on that.
with that, I usually take and, probably every 20, 30 minutes, if I haven't caught a fish, I at least check my line. Usually I'll bring that lure down to right around the reel rod butt section and just check everything from the reel up, because usually that's what's getting the most abuse. And I've definitely saved myself a few times doing that. So that's a little pro tip for y'all.
So I would say, like, in my personal experience, if you're fishing the canals that are like the water's low, there's always more sharp structure out there. Probably bump up to like 65-pound braid, probably like an 8 strand, maybe a 12 strand if you're feeling real, you're feeling like I feel like we're gonna get cut off left and right. It's a little bit thicker, so obviously more strands, you're gonna have more abrasion resistance, but a good 4-strand braid works really good for open water stuff. So if you're not fishing in the thickest stuff and you want a little more casting distance, go with like a 4-strand. If you want to go with a little more abrasion resistance and still get some casting, benefit out of it, go with an 8. I like the 8-strand braid myself for most of the frogging that I do.
Yeah,
But
that's what I run as well, as an 8-strand.
yeah, every once in a while you're like, you know what, I think that today I need to, maybe it's like there's no wind or maybe the wind is fighting you or whatever. I always keep it real with 4-strand braid just to see if I can sling it a little further. But
I don't even do that, to be
it's
honest with
nothing
you.
you can't change with like a little bit of a longer rod. But when you're on the bank like that, especially if you're in an area where it's like my back's against the trees, there's a lot of overhanging stuff. You're not going to be able to fish with like a 7.4 as easily as you would with like a 7-foot or a 6'10" or something. Just too much more arc you have to put into your cast, so you're just going to end up in the tree above you or behind you more often than not.
The other thing I was going to say is that, when you're canal fishing like that, half the time the wind isn't really a factor. You've got the houses or those trees you're talking about that you're always getting stuck in behind you, just blocking most of that wind. So
It can
90% of the
be
time,
in when you're fishing an open canal, especially one where they're like, it's like the size of a road on each side. But if you're trying to get that casting distance and you're trying to cast not across all the time, but you're trying to get as far down on one side as possible, that wind will take your line and just hit you on every thorn bush on the side. So sometimes you need to get like, not necessarily like a longer cast, but you need to be able to send it like a laser beam faster so the line doesn't get caught in the wind. 1 minute the frog's in the water and now all your line is going to be stuck in a bush on the side. You're dragging it across and it's like, oh, the fish is right here, and then your frog just starts turning inwards and start crawling up on the dirt. Well, there's no fish on the earth right now. Like, this isn't helping me, and I can't get it to drop back in. But that means you either
or
spooked them up or you got to recast or whatever. So sometimes,
well, the other downside of that is, like you said, when it's up in those thorn bushes, if you get that strike, now you got all that slack. You have to essentially set out of it before you can even really get a good hook set.
mhm.
So, being able to laser shoot something like that is definitely really important.
Yep. Sometimes it's better to cast across and just let the wind push your bait over. I mean,
I've
it's not the
I've done that a
fastest
time or two.
technique, but sometimes like there's a fish there, I can see it, and I can't get that cast in for whatever reason. Maybe it's a tree or something. Like a lot of palmetto trees are the worst, dude. There will always be a fish on a palmetto tree. Not always, but like it's worth throwing at
It's a
it.
good starting place.
But getting it past that palmetto tree sometimes to get it underneath can be not the easiest, especially if the wind is blowing in towards that tree. So sometimes you just got to cast it across and wait for that thing to go all the way down to the side, and then put your rod tip out perpendicular to the canal and try and pull it back underneath the other way. But yep, that's the joy of fishing in the canal. It seems really easy. You're like, oh, it's a straight line. We're just going to fish that side and then fish this side and then move up. And for the most part, it is. But sometimes you got to get that good aim, perfect aim cast under an overhanging tree or right against the bank where you can see one is kind of finned out of the water or whatever. And you can't just laser beam it on top of the fish because then you spook the fish. I mean, the big ones might eat, but the little ones, if you hit them with it, they're not going to be as enthused,
I've even run into half the time you'll get those bigger fish, those 3+ pound fish. They're not even interested when you drop it like 6 inches to a foot beyond their head. I've watched them spook with that. A lot of the time, I think it really depends on the day.
It is possible, though. I always advocate for throw it onto the bank. Like if you were fishing across, for sure, hit the bank with it so you don't make a big splash in the water and then drop your frog in. And a lot of times you will hit the bank and it'll do like that one little bounce off and like you hear it. And it's funny when you fish a regular frog, it makes a totally different sound than one of our frogs with the silicone latex. It's just a different sound to it. It's almost like a dodgeball when it pings, it's like ping and then drops in. Whereas like you hit it with like a big frog and it hits the bank, it's just thud and it's just stuck in the mud, like that plastic has no give to it. So when it hits the bank, it's just doop and sticks. But you get that little pop off the side of the bank and it kind of hops up and slowly, easily lands in the water. I've had fish blow up on it before it hits the water. You'll hit the bank and it'll be jumping in and they'll jump out and grab it. Now I've got 40 yards of line out there. I'm trying to reel all my slack in to be able to set this hook, line out of the reel to make sure that, I'm not backlashing off of that smack on the side of the canal or whatever. So yeah, they can. I mean, you don't want to laser beam them with it, but sometimes, I mean, they'll hit it. They're waiting for stuff to drop down. They're quick, so you got to be prepared. If you get jump scared easily, you're not going to be having a good time. I'll tell you that much. If you're watching the video of somebody's pitching a baseball and they miss and then it hits the camera and that scares you, yeah, you're in for a time.
Well, I've gotten lucky because when I do that, my natural instinct is to go, oh, and then I get them, Something I also probably should have mentioned back in the tackle talk was my reel is a reel speed of like 7.5 to 1. So I am fishing a faster reel for that time when, let's say that snake, eats it and I got all that slack, I got to reel out. Or, like for instance, when I, told the story of that fish coming back 3 or 4 times for it, if I had to get it in real quick to then fire it back out, a faster gear ratio, you can always slow down, but you can never really speed up. So that's something I've kind of found that helps me out.
When you're working the bladed frogs, is the faster gear ratio, not only you're covering more water, but you're getting more action out of the blades and stuff like that. Obviously, if you're towing with a 5-to-1 pen or something from 1990, then you're probably not going to get as much blade action. No matter how fast you spin it, it can only retrieve so much line. But if you're doing like a 10-to-1, like I fish a 10-to-1 a lot for my search baits, if I just want to cover water, because I figure like, the fish can swim faster than you think. If they really want it, they'll burn it down. And you can always slow it down a little bit, but having that faster retrieve speed does get you more bites because it's less fatiguing. Because you're not reeling as much to cover as much water. You're reeling a little bit less and you're covering water faster. So you're going to be out there for, I mean, we're dumb. We'll go out there for 16 hours and I'll look down and be like, yeah, you did literally 14 miles today on your step counter of walking the canals. And it's like, yeah, we caught like 17, 18 fish and we put in the time for it. And some days you go out there and it's like, yeah, you did 10 miles and you caught 2 fish because you just went during the heat of the day or, wasn't in good conditions or whatever. It's not going to stop me. But
no, I've caught
think about how many steps you've taken and then how much water has your rat or your frog touched. You know what I mean? Because if you walk 16 miles, you probably were in the water for 10 of those.
Yeah, well, the other thing I was going to say is, when, like you said, when you're running that higher gear ratio, because you're able to run that faster, you're covering more water subconsciously quicker. So I feel like you're able to fish the area heavier in less time, if that makes sense. The other thing is, I tend to walk fast. So as I'm firing stuff out and fishing, I can fire 6, 7 casts in one spot and never really stop walking. I can hit that same tree or decoy duck 6 different angles. I've noticed that sometimes if you run it behind their tail or whatever, they might be lazy and they might not want to spin around for it. So if you then fire it back around back into their face and it just drives right by their face and they're like, oh yeah, I'll take that. Just thank you. So that can help too.
And it's different when you're fishing with somebody else. Dev and I have gone fishing. Nolan's been there a couple of times for when we go fishing. And I'll be like, okay, you guys head in that direction. And this canal goes to that road, cut across, and then come back the other way. I'm going to go this direction because we just want to cover as much water as possible. Usually I like to pair up 2 people at a time. That way it's just not too many lines in the water. You're not scaring the fish as much. But yeah, you go one way, I'll go the other way. And then Dev's walking at Dev's pace. And I'm fishing I'm fishing twice as much because I'm like, I got to fish more before Dev can get to the other side and fish my half. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you're quick with it, you got that 10-to-1 gear ratio reel, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna just zip my frog past everything, and if it blows up, it blows up. Obviously, if
so the secrets come out.
Yeah, if you catch one, you're gonna be spending less time
Yeah.
or less time fishing and more time dealing with the fish for a little bit. But yeah, that's the point of power fishing. You want to hit as much cover as possible and see
Exactly.
how many areas were you successful at, and then you build your pattern of like, okay, they're in the overhanging trees right now, and they're not hitting it when you're burning it. They're hitting it when you throw it under there and you stop for a second, or like you throw it in there and you start burning it back, and they kind of swirl on it, but they don't necessarily blow up on it. All right, now they've given away their spot. Let's go ahead and whip it back under there, and then you get the fish, catch it, make a little video, long arm it, make sure every fish is a 10-pounder, right? And then throw it back. And then you keep on walking. You try and hit as much as possible, especially when we're walking ponds, because there will be a series of ponds that you're fishing, and you fish a couple of ponds, and then you go, okay, let's reassess. If they're not on the ponds, let's go to the canals, and if they're not in the canals, then let's go look for like some different kind of structures like culverts and bridges and shady spots, because if they're not in any of those 3 places, then it doesn't matter how much walking you're doing. You're literally will just be trying to find one hungry fish at that point. And there'll always be one. There's always going to be one that's a little bit different than the rest of the pattern. And, they got their little resident spot that they have picked out, and they'll eat it when you throw it past them. But sometimes you just got to spend the time with the Lambo feedies hitting the ground, finding that one fish to catch one that day.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say is that, I've noticed some of these fish, whether it's the same fish or not, I don't know. I'm not tagging any of these fish, or I don't have any way of, photo recognition, for lack of a better word. But, there's a lot of spots that we've been to, me and Dev, and, you fire that frog in there and you're like, okay, I expect to blow up here, and then boom, it comes. The next time you do the same thing, the same thing, and the same thing. They're almost habitual about that. They'll be habitual about being under them palm fronds or on that coral. And there's been times where I've kind of caught myself, especially towards the end when I finally figure out that pattern of I'll just start skipping stuff.
Yeah, skip stuff where you don't think there's going to be a fish at, and then just go to the spots that you've been having success on. And that's part of building the pattern. I was like, I'm not going to spend time fan casting a grass mat in the middle if I know that they're not in the middle, they're on the edge line and they're under trees.
Right, definitely.
I feel like there's a lot of superstition when it comes to fishing too. But I said it before, I think it was last week's podcast. I said there's only so many ambush points for the fish to be successful in hunting. You know what I mean? That's their primary drive, is to eat things. So they need to be in positions where they can eat things. And if you're fishing and you're used to being like, okay, here's a cutout here in the bank where there's going to be one. I know there's a culvert pipe at the end of this spot. I know there's a couple of sticks that stick out and it makes a good spot, and I've caught them there before. It kind of becomes routine. You're just like, all right, let's go out here. We're going to punch our 15, 20 places on this little spot. I might fan cast a little bit, and then we're going to pick up sticks and we're going to go find another spot, and we're going to do the same thing. Because if the evening bite is the best bite for you and you want to go out, or that's your time to fish, you only got 2 or 3 hours to fish. You want to maximize your time. Topwater fishing is not necessarily, oh, this is the best lure to throw for this, or, oh, this is the best color. You can only catch them on. That's all bullshit. I think it's all situational, and different days are going to do different things. The only thing that's not situational is the cover. The cover is, well, it's less likely to change. Okay. Like, yeah, somebody might dig out the pond, or they might add a Christmas tree or something. But for the most part, that tree is still going to be there next time you're going fishing. That culvert pipe is still going to be there.
And that brings me up to a couple things. Is A, you were talking about lures and color. If I'm fishing with someone else or a few people, usually I'm picking a different color from them. If they're fishing a black, I'm fishing a white, or I'm fishing a chartreuse. One of my favorites splash rats is that yellow.
Mm-hmm.
The yellow, the black, the pink. I think it's a pink.
Got pink.
Yeah. Pink, if it change it up, because there's no point in fishing the same damn thing or almost identical to someone else if you haven't found a pattern.
Yeah, especially if you're
You
both not
know,
catching. Yeah.
right. Well, don't be ashamed that if your buddy starts catching on the black one, switch to a
Yeah,
black
I'm
one.
throwing a black
You
frog.
found
Yeah.
a pattern. I've had that a lot with Dev, where there was one day where we hit him up on the crime scene swamp walker. But then the next day, he's just smashing him on the black splash rat, and I was wishing I had a black splash rat.
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then the other thing I was going to point out is on that structure. A lot of the times here in South Florida, if you get those new construction homes, they're building them up higher for floods. So they're sloping those yards down into almost a little gully that goes right into the pond. And right in that choke point there, a lot of the time a snakehead will back himself up in there and he'll just wait for something to come across. And I've caught a few that way too.
Yeah, when you get these new construction homes, the thing about fishing in Florida is like, yeah, it's a new construction home, but there's also probably a pile of building materials at the bottom of this lake that they just dug out. You know what I mean? Because they have to, it's for water runoff. It's what it's
Right.
for. And yeah, that's all connected by the canal system, so fish will get in there eventually. Some places will stock them, but it's not reliable.
I've heard a few stories of some of the guys working on the turnpike and I-95, and on lunch break they'll go out there with a fishing rod and they'll be smashing the 5-6 pound peacocks and some big snakeheads and stuff like that. I've been to a few spots that they'll dump you out right on the side of the turnpike or something like that behind someone's house, and it's like, all right, I got to take note of this spot and come back, because a lot of those banks are lined with that rock, that artificial big chunk rock,
Mm-hmm. The
and that'll hold
limestone
heat.
rock, man.
Yeah, well, it's not even limestone. It's more of like a black,
Oh, yeah.
gray kind of. It's almost like an asphalt, but it's bigger chunks. It's like 1 foot by 1 foot, almost boulders, and that'll hold a lot of heat. So I've noticed in the cooler months, those snakehead will pull up onto that rock system there, and they'll just bask in that sun.
You can go out there at low tide and definitely take a stock of, there's some structure here that you don't necessarily see during the flooding, but that doesn't mean there won't be a snakehead sitting there, because they'll come up from 2 or 3 feet and come hit your frog. They'll come investigate.
Oh, definitely. Especially on those floods, because like I said, they're expecting stuff to be washed down. I think when that water hits, like you said, it's definitely all hands on deck situation. Eat what you can, stuff yourself.
Yeah, they all pull together. Some days they're on fire and every one of them is hitting, and other days it's like, yeah, you just have to comb through them until you find the ones that want to actually blow up on your frog. All right, so we talked about power fishing. We talked about casting, what kind of setup you need, what kind of frog we're using, usually bladed frogs. Sometimes you slow it down. So let's give a couple of tips in general, tips that you would need. We call this section field notes, but so what's one thing about the power fishing game that you learned that you wish you would learn years ago?
I'm gonna say don't overthink it. I tend to overcomplicate a lot of stuff. So my brain was always like, oh, well, if I throw it at this speed, or if I throw it at this speed, or if color really matters, then I should be changing out every 5 minutes. Grab a frog, tie it on, and fish. If they're gonna hit it, they're gonna hit it, or they're gonna show themselves. You'll see them if they spook. You'll see them if they sit there and posture up to eat it again. If they spook, that's when you change out. If they posture up, throw it right back in there, and usually you'll get that bite. It's that simple of just, you see these guys walking around with a big old backpack. It's full to the brim with 30 pounds of gear, and they don't touch but 5 or 6 lures the entire trip. So really overthinking can, for lack of a better word, kill you in bank angling and canal stomping.
Yeah, I'm definitely like, when it's 115 degrees outside, I'm not carrying 20 pounds of stuff. I think the phone and the camera, that's too much stuff. Sometimes I just bring my ID and I leave my wallet in the truck, because don't rob my truck. But it's just too much weight. I mean, you're walking 16 miles in the heat and it's just dead weight. Don't bring it with you if you don't need it. Now, I'm not saying don't bring stuff that you need. Bring your tools that you need to put the fish back and that kind of, like, to get your lures back. Bring your knife, bring your pliers. You might need to have like a jawbreakers or something, which is, I wanted to talk about that earlier when you were talking about like, oh, I need 2 pairs of pliers to get my frogs out. One thing that has not caught on in South Florida that is really big in like Maryland and the northern snakehead fishing communities, it's the jawbreakers. That's like a reverse clamp. You grip onto it and it opens
really?
up the jaw of the fish. And a lot of these things can be like overdone and you'll mess up the fish. So you got to be kind of careful with it. Which is why I don't like advocate for using them a lot, but they
Right.
definitely can help if you use them the right way. I just think that I know how people are, and there's going to be a lot of dumb people that go out there and they're just going to like crank that thing all the way open, and you'll have like you know, a 12-inch snakehead, and then you're trying to jack this thing's jaw all the way open, and you're gonna end up breaking it and messing up the fish.
Well, that's one thing about these that I like. These are the original fish grippers. These are the juniors, so they're like 6 or 8 inches long. I mean, that's my hand, in front of it. But I've been able to just open it up, stick it in their bottom lip, and just kind of angle it so that their mouth is fairly open, but not being forced open. And that's helped me get lures out of their mouths before too. So
yeah, I usually am pretty good about just sticking my hand in there. I'm not telling you to do that, okay?
right, yeah, don't
For
do that, guys.
insurance purposes, don't stick your finger in the snakehead's mouth. They have teeth. However, you can grab into their gill plate, not the red stuff where their gills are, but like the silver skin underneath it, and you can kind of use that too. If you dead hang them a little bit, they start leaning back, right? And then you can pry their jaw open a little bit, and you'll get your pliers in there, and just
Yeah, usually you can
always
feel.
try and grab the hooks, because if you grab the body and start yanking on it and stuff like that, and you mess it up, then that's on you. We have a warranty though. Like if a fish breaks your lure and you have any kind of proof that a fish breaks your lure, we'll send you another one. If you break your lure because you're doing dumb stuff with pliers or bringing in tree limbs and things like that, that's between you and Jesus. I can't help you.
Or don't leave them in ultra hot places. If they
Yeah,
melt on your dash or
they
something
don't
like
melt
that in the
though. I
Florida
mean,
sun.
honestly,
No, no.
no,
It'd have
ours
to get
don't melt. You'll
extremely
melt
hot.
things to it. Like if you put it in a box with a bunch of elastisol, products or elastic. I guess I'm trying to be careful about what brand I say here, but the ones that are notorious for melting in the heat, like yeah, you
Right.
can't put those together. They'll melt together and stuff like that. But I mean, Trenton had his in a house fire. His garage was on fire, and all his other shit melted. And then he goes to open up the box, and it was a Blaze Runner. It was a yellow and red Blaze Runner, and
I saw that,
it was
yeah.
no longer yellow and red. It was black. But he was like, still squishy. I could still fish this thing, honestly.
Didn't he go catch fish on that
I
too?
think he did. I really think
Yeah.
he did.
I was
Now,
gonna say I think
I'm
I
not going to
remember
replace
seeing
your
it.
lure if you light it on fire. All right. So if you want to go test this and you want to light lures on fire, I just think that's probably not very good for the environment. But yeah, go for it. It'll probably be fine.
Yeah, you'd probably get a few views on YouTube or Instagram, wherever you post
Joy clickbait. Woo.
it.
Anyway, all right, let's get into the last cast section. We got 3 questions in the last cast, and then we will sign off. We have, what is a technique you are still trying to learn? Or what is something about fishing that you're still trying to learn and figure out?
Don't think about working the lure a certain way. If it's got a blade, straight retrieve it, or add a pause.
So
You
you
don't need
heard
to
it from
do this.
no thought, just fish.
Right. I've literally been on the phone with people just out there, hucking and whining, hucking and whining. All of a sudden it's like, oh, hang on, I got one. You're not paying any attention to it. And then all of a sudden you just start catching fish and it's like, damn, why did I miss this pattern?
From a
You know,
marketing scheme, we would say this is no thought required, chuck and wind, the easiest frog lures to ever use. Like that's the way you would pitch this instead of just be like, no thoughts, don't need them.
yeah, you don't need to add these extra little pops and twitches and, you don't need to make this thing go chitty chitty bang bang. As long as it goes straight and makes noise, they're going to eat it.
Yeah, if you run it past them, for the most part, they're pretty aggressive. If they want to eat something, they'll come get it. Very rarely do you really need to finesse them, but like I said, they'll give away their position, and then you can just decide, do I want to try and throw it in that pocket and finesse them a little bit and see if they come back for it? But I wouldn't spend hours on one fish that's sitting there, because unless you see that it is your new PB, a state record or something, just hit the ones that are eating.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I've only used maybe the chuggernaut or something like that at night for some bass, but I don't really go out snakehead fishing at night. Mainly because I really don't know the people or area down south, because I drive down south to where I go fish, and I feel more comfortable being able to see what's around me. Whether it's a big hole or whether it's someone's dog or
Yeah, you can
whatever.
and will definitely fall in on the side of the bank.
Yeah.
And when I say fall in, I don't mean like down into the water. I mean you'll be walking and it's flat land. The embankment is next to you, and all of a sudden there's no ground there. Like you're just in a hole. And
Well, I've had it a few times.
They can be 6-8 feet deep. Like legitimately, you're just walking and then boom, you're gone. Usually they're not wide enough where like your whole body falls in, but a leg will go down there for sure.
I've had a few times where you find some basketball-sized hole that's 4 or 5 feet deep. Your whole leg sinks down it, and you're like, "How did I not see this?"
All the grass. The grass
Well,
grows
damn iguanas and stuff
it.
like that are digging out the bank and this, that, and the other, and you just don't see it because, like you said, it gets overgrown with grass or whatever. And so you definitely got to be careful with walking those canals doing that.
Yep, absolutely. I guess what's one piece of advice you would give to a new angler who's trying to get out there and catch a snakehead?
Get out there.
Just go.
You're not going to catch them sitting. I mean, you're going to get a lot of advice watching the podcast and listening to us, have a fun time for an hour or so. But the best advice I can give out to any angler, whether you're trying to catch snakehead, snook, largemouth bass, is just get out there and fish. Even if it's raining or cloudy or you're like, oh, this looks yucky, I don't think they're going to bite, get out there and try it because you never know. You might find the new hot bite is when it's lightning and thunder and you're trying not to get struck by lightning.
I don't advocate going out in the lightning, but
I was going to say I don't really recommend it.
As somebody who has caught fish during the lightning storm, where it was at the point where literally you can feel the electricity building up, and I'm
Start
trying.
To tingle.
See, I'm dumb. You'll feel the static electricity building up, and I'm on a kayak and I'm paddling, and I'm like, I think I'm gonna die. I might actually die, and I'm gonna look really, really dumb, melted to a piece of plastic. I've survived way worse shit than this, and this is how I die. That's crazy. And then I'll be like, nah, that's a good spot for a fish. Hold on, let me whip it out there. And I'll catch one, and then I'll just have a fish, and I'm like, all right, we gotta go, dude. I'm trying to put you back, but I can't get the hooks out. I'm taking you back to where the truck is. I'll throw you back in a minute. They can live out of the water for a while. They'll be all right. But
yeah, right.
Yeah, don't do what I do, okay? Don't do.
Yeah, I don't recommend it, but definitely get out there before the storm, or if the lightning is 13 plus miles away, but it's raining out, definitely get out there and try because it's not like they're gonna go, oh, it's raining, I'm going to get wet. They're sitting in the water, so
they're actually waiting for the rain to push things off the bank, like we talked about. One of my best days was it was light rain. I mean, it was like constant misty, crappy light rain, but I went out there with the blaze runner. I mean, we just tore it up. We walked 3 or 4 ponds, and I think I caught 17 or 18 fish that day. That was the day on YouTube, and Dev and I went out there, and I think Dev caught his PB. I caught a peacock bass on the blaze runner that day. They were so fired up from the rain. But
right,
like I said, they're conditional fish. When the conditions are right, they're out there. When they're not right, they're sitting at the bottom waiting for them to change.
100%.
All right, last question before we wrap it up here. You get one last cast. Where are you going to throw your lure, and what frog are you tying on?
Oh.
So if you were on your way out, and it's like, all right, I'm in this fishing spot. This is my fishing spot. I know that, we got to get back to the car. And I know there's an overhang, and I know there's a culvert. 50-50, which one would you pick to fish?
I'm probably skipping the culvert.
Skip the culvert and go right for the
just
overhang?
for my area. It's usually noon or something like that. So it's getting real hot. You expect those fish to tuck in. If you got that overhang right beside a culvert, I'm skipping that culvert.
Okay. Right on. All right, you got it. We're at the hour and 5-minute mark. So you can find Nolan and all of his social media over on, you got Instagram, of course.
Instagram is going to be Land and Sea Adventures is
Okay.
the public profile. I'm trying to get out there and post more content, but in between school and work and everything else, it's been a little challenging lately. But that's the best place you can.
Get out there. Just do it.
There you go.
Anyway, that's going to be the end of the second podcast, Feeling Froggy with Invasive Lures. If you're watching this on YouTube, we appreciate you. Please hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Music, Amazon Music, why? Dude, YouTube has video. I get it, but why?
You get to see our ugly mugs on YouTube.
Come to the dark side. Watch 40 ads per hour. I'm going to get demonetized. That's okay. This isn't how I make money. What's up? Anyway, head to the website. You can check out some of our lures. You can check out some of our blog articles where we teach you guys how to fish. It's called Topwater Tactics, and I'm still writing the advanced tactics part, but the basics of frog fishing is all done. You guys can read that. If you guys know how to read, then you'll get the reward of being able to learn some stuff. And we are offering some new products on there. We're trying to offer you guys a little more value. And then, of course, follow us on social media. We are Invasive Lures on everything. We advocate a lot for cast-to-catch video. I mean, you can sit here and talk about fishing all day, but if you can't back it up with video, then I don't believe you.
Well, no pictures, no proof.
Yeah, right? If you don't have that cast-to-catch, even pictures nowadays, because you'll have a dry-ass flare hawk in a snook's mouth. You're like,
yeah,
okay,
right.
Lenny, you definitely caught that. That makes sense. What do we call those? Bait hangers. We don't do any bait hanging here. We do cast-to-catch video, and it shows these things work.
The other thing I was going to say is about that website, and I believe your Instagram too, is that you've usually got all, these videos on what the lures look like in the water, how they're designed to be retrieved, stuff like that. So, if you're looking on the website and going, man, that thing looks cool, I wonder how that looks. pop onto the Instagram or something like that and go check that out, because that helped me a lot when I was learning some of these lures.
So that was one of the big things when we recently updated the website as of like a month ago. And one of the biggest things is if you keep scrolling down a little bit, there's a section where it shows you the retrieve on the water. Now, some lures can do different retrieves, don't get me wrong, but like there's only one slot for a video. So it's like, this is the kind of the basic retrieve. The splash rat, you pull it, it makes a wake and it throws water up. Walking frog does walking, popping frog does popping. Pop. You'll see how it works. And then at the bottom of every page, you will see the link to our Instagram. So you can comb through like the last 15, 20 videos or whatever is on the site. And you'll see like, yeah, this guy caught this fish with this lure, and here's a cast to catch from Nolan, and here's a cast to catch from Dev, and here's a cast to catch from Jake,
JJ, or whoever.
Yeah, right. So you'll see that like we have people that go out there and just punch the clock, because that's all fishing is. You go out there, you punch the clock, you put the time in, you're going to learn the patterns, you're going to catch more fish, and you just want to go out there with gear that doesn't fall apart on you. We were talking about it last week with Kobe. It doesn't need to be super expensive, which I try not to have our frogs be super expensive.
And nowadays, you got some brands charging like $25 for a frog, and I look at that and go, that's absurd for something I know is going to break apart on two fish.
Yep, don't get me started. So we've always advocated, like I did the lures for me. I designed the frog the way I wanted it to be. We did a lot of, product testing on it, and we tried a bunch of different things, and we changed the weights, we changed the hooks, we changed the sizes, we changed the internal, like I got it dialed into, this is what I want to fish, that I know, like I accept these are good. So that's what we're putting out there. If it's good enough for me, right, which I have really exacting standards, then it's probably going to be good enough for everybody else. And if I find something that works better, then I'll change it up. I never stop experimenting. I've got all kinds of designs, but I never stop experimenting, trying to make things better. And sometimes it just comes down to cost. I could put tungsten in there and have a little more weight.
It's not going to be worth it though.
But I don't think it's going to be worth it to have to charge you guys another $2 for like the cost of tungsten in bulk and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just not worth it. And I don't think it makes that much of a difference.
And the other thing I do like, I forget who told me, it may have been you, that, because I asked, and I get a lot of questions on, well, regular frogs are like 3/4 of an ounce. Why are yours a half ounce or 14 grams or whatever they are? Well, because it's a lighter presentation. It doesn't splash as hard, doesn't spook as hard. And I found that to be true.
I don't see anybody on the market making bigger frogs. The big trend right now is making smaller frogs that are the same size as the frogs that we've been putting out for years. So you tell me.
Well, the other thing is, especially the way I'm doing when I'm power fishing it, I'm moving it so fast at a half inch or 3/4 of an inch. It's really not going to make that much of a difference. They're not getting the chance to look at it and go, oh, that's a half inch smaller than what I've actually been looking at.
Right, they're looking at movement for the most part.
It's just, I'm running like NASCAR over their head and they're going, yoink, or they're going, nope, not going to eat it.
Well, that, and again, we designed them for snakeheads. So, like, the problem you have with large frogs is that the snakeheads, while they might bite them, they hit them, you have a lot bigger hook, and you have less surface area available now in the fish's mouth to be able to get that hook in there. So, like, yeah, I've had fish take down a big frog. I just never get the hookup on it. It's just that's unreliable hookup ratio. I think the smaller, narrower frogs, when they get sucked in by a bass or a snakehead, it travels a little bit further in. It gives you a little more surface area to get that hook point into the fish's mouth, and then you just get better hookup ratio.
So it's definitely been thought out. There's a lot of time and effort into it. It might look a little goofy, untraditional.
But yeah, they're cartoonish. I'll be the first one to tell you they're cartoony, but the fish don't care. And when you have a product that works, it's like, do I take this back to the drawing board and play around with it? And we could change the paint pattern on it, and we could make the eyeball look. Who gives a shit? The fish don't care. The fish do not care. The fish care about, is the color right? Is it looking like it's something I want to eat? And when you got something that's working, like the splash rat, everybody's like, oh, the splash rat looks like a ball sack. I'm like, yeah, but that thing catches fish, dude.
It's funny you say that, because I think the first ever snakehead I caught on an invasive lure was the brown splash rat, or the cane toad splash rat.
Call that thing the hot dog.
Yeah. I've heard it called, I've heard it called many things, hot dog being one of the cleaner ones.
Hot dog, sack rat, yeah.
Yep.
But you know what? That thing has been a #1 producer since we put it out. For a while, the chop frog was hot, and I think that there was just a lot more people throwing it, so we got like a lot more media coming in. But as far as like overall steady fish catching power, I think the blade on the splash rat has just been the #1 producer for numbers. And I've been throwing that specifically like for the last 2 months. And I've thrown the chop frog, and I've caught a few, like when I need a little more finesse presentation. But in the river system where I'm fishing at, it's nothing but throw that white rat and pull it in and let the blade do the work. And you'll see the videos. I mean, it's just bowfin bass, bowfin bass. Works for me.
Well, and it's funny you say that because I see Nakati Bass Tour, Jake over there, he crushes them on the green chop frog. We're all, really close to being in the same state of Florida, and we're all fishing majorly different things. So it just goes to show how much a color or a slight different blade variation can vary upon a body of water.
Yep. Once you get the fish figured out, it doesn't really make sense to change up the lure that's working on you. Yeah.
Right.
But all right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Again, you can follow us on the socials. You can go to our website and check out some of our lures, invasivelures.com. I'm sure you'll see it. And you'll see probably, 5 to 10 clips from this episode. So if you see them, leave a comment, ask us questions, and we'll try and get them answered on the next one. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, send in your credentials. Usually I'm trying to bring on the guys that are pro staff that have been around for a little bit, and we interact and we talk fishing and we go fishing and that kind of stuff. Some people fish different ways, or they have a different thought process when they go to fishing, and it's always interesting to talk about, at least for me. But I'm a topwater frog nerd, and I'm never going to change. Have a good one, boys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace out.